This is Phantom Electric Ghost doing it live on the air, and we're talking to Margaret Bryden for the first time. Welcome to the Phantom Electric Ghost podcast. How you doing tonight?
Hi, I'm so happy to be here. This is exciting for me.
Well, it's fun to talk to people from around the world. We love to talk to people on the show, and one of the things we like to do is just have these live podcasts that we talk about your story. But before we get to the heart of your story, I always ask a couple questions. What motivates you, and why do you do what you do?
Oh my goodness. Okay, so what motivates me is such a broad question. I feel like I have a million answers. Um, I think generally speaking, it started out with my upbringing.
Hmm.
And I had a pretty tumultuous upbringing at times, and I found myself in a lot of situations growing up with my family members, with my friend groups, with my general environment where there was a lot of dysfunction. And I didn't realize it at the time, but the root of the problems that were going on were mental health issues. And I think over time, then as an adult, wanting to answer questions for myself, wanting to understand myself better, wanting to understand my family better, wanting to understand my social circles better, it just kind of led me down the path of learning more about mental health and about emotional health, which is something that I don't know about you, but I was never taught emotional health growing up or in school or anything like that. And eventually I just learned enough and became so interested in it, so fascinated by it, that I became a mental health therapist. So I'm a clinical mental health counselor now. And so with all of that going on and also becoming a mother, I think things just kind of shifted in me and matured in me. And I reached a point where I think with my daughter, I suddenly became concerned that if something were to happen to me, I wanted to pass on to her some of the experiences, some of the knowledge that I've acquired over time. I became concerned that if something were to happen to me, she wouldn't have her mother anymore. Like, how would she know? How could I transmit to her the things that I've learned that I want her to know and be able to have with her and reference. And so the idea of writing a book kind of was born from there. I started writing originally for my daughter, and that led me to writing. I felt a very strong impulse to do it, and that kind of leads me to where I am today. And then once I had written the book, it became something bigger than that.
Yeah, so your book is How I Understand It, A Bad Poet's Guide to Mental Health and Resilience.
Yes.
I think poetry is great. It's a great art form because I love about it. It's like, it's free. It just takes your time. You know,
Yes.
you look at musicians, we got to buy a guitar, you got to buy a thing, you got to go have a van. You can always go show up. Like I used to go, I live like in Northeast. I go to Northampton around Smith and Mount Holyoke and go to like these cafes and just like, you'd have these open mics and you could read your poetry. And
Wow.
it was pretty cool because he had that kinda, beat like a beatnik scene
Yeah,
with all these,
yeah.
like, Amherst College and UMass is like the 5 college area, you got Smith and Mount and, they're gonna tell you if they dig it or not. It's kinda like you just had to have the guts to kinda get up in front of the mic, but also just the idea of, like, before you even go to the mic is, like, you have the freedom. It's
Yeah.
like a diary. It's, like, cathartic,
It
'cause
is cathartic, and it gives you a lot of freedom, and then, I don't know, there's something about getting in front of a bunch of people with a mic and saying something that's very vulnerable that you've written that makes you feel very alive.
yeah, I think it's awesome. You actually have done it open mics. You've actually gone out and read it?
Uh, I do a lot of public speaking and I do a lot of poetry reading, but it's usually in therapeutic settings, so I can't say
Mm.
that I've been to a lot of open mics, but I do a lot of public speaking.
Public speaking, you do that, so that's cool. Well, I think it's, awesome to kinda get it out in the air. Just like musicians, like, we always have to, like, you gotta get that song out in the world. 'Cause you just have it in your room, it's like, "Well, what's that gonna make you feel good?" But you didn't really tell anybody about it.
Mhm,
Um, so this idea of, like, art therapy
mhm,
or integrating poetry into therapy, I think it's a constant like, I've talked to a lot of people, like, that were therapists, and they had, like, art therapy, like painting or drawing.
mhm, mhm.
But I think poetry gets to, like, a deeper part of you, like, gets to that, like, Victorian, like, looking glass self.
I think so too. I think there's something to creative expression and doing it with language that's really powerful. I think all forms of therapy kind of scratch a certain itch, you know? And there are things that you can do with art, with paint, with acrylics, with oils that you can't do with
With
writing, but
words,
there are
yeah.
things that you can do with writing and reading that you cannot do with art. So I think they address different things, but they're all leading to a common goal, which is to express ourselves. And so whatever way works best for you, I think that's the way that you should go more toward. But I don't think enough people know that creative writing and writing poetry can be used therapeutically. I think most people have probably heard that, oh, you can do painting and creative
Yeah,
expression
painting
that way, and that's something that's really kind of encouraged even in elementary school or preschool. Like from the beginning, you're always kind of encouraged to draw, but
to draw
n-
and paint,
it
yeah.
using poetry maybe it's a little less well known.
Well, it's harder because I think more people get judgmental because then, like, then you start thinking about, "Oh, like, I'm not Shakespeare. It's not, it's not Huckleberry Finn.
I mean, who is Shakespeare?
It's not Moby Dick, it's not Pride and Prejudice." I think a lot of people get hung up on, like, "Well, I'm not William Blake." I'm not Thoreau. Like that. So like they don't know, and it's like it opens you up because you could draw is like, but once you put words on the page, people can ask you, what did you mean? What are you saying? And it kind of opens up that vulnerability, which I think
Mhm.
every artist kind of dives into their vulnerability because that's like your secret sauce.
Your secret sauce, I like that.
It is like everything that you are as an artist. Like, yeah, I could go and do that cover tune, but who wants to hear me play the cover tune? Wouldn't they rather hear Taylor Swift sing that? Like, isn't it better if I actually write something that's actually personal, like the age of the singer-songwriters?
Original to you, yeah.
Yeah, I think the singer-songwriter age, that brought on by the Beatles and Dylan, was that people didn't have to be perfect pitch.
Mm,
They could start to actually, it didn't have to be Tin Pan Alley professionals writing it, like Neil Diamond and, you know, like all the great writers like Tapestry, all the great, like, writers were from Tin Pan Alley, and the singer wasn't the writer. A lot of times in music, the early history of music is there's a lot of times the singer was not the writer of the song.
yeah, and it's really intimidating. It's intimidating to think of, like, all the greats who have made these beautiful works of art, these beautiful poems, or these beautiful songs, and I know my own journey with poetry. I actually really didn't like poetry for a long time. I know, it's hard to believe because now I've written a book of poetry, but I was really intimidated by it and put off by it because of all the
Mhm.
reasons that you're talking about. It's like, "Oh, you can never be as great
Like
as."
your canon, like you're going against the canon. Like as soon as you go
Yeah.
into poetry, it's all Emily Dickinson. We got all these great poets. It's like how could I ever? That's like with artists. Like get people that play guitar. I run the guitarist all the time. I can't be Jimmy Page. I can't be
Mhm.
Hendrix. I can't be Eddie Van Halen. I can't be Lead Belly. It's like, well, of course you're not going to be them.
Yeah.
You're going to be you.
And that's the whole point. The point is to be you. And I think that's part of the reason why I kind of came up with this idea of bad poetry. Okay. I'm never going to be as great as the greats. My poetry is probably never going to win awards. It's probably not even that good. That's not the point. The point isn't to create poetry that will win awards or that will, I don't know, get me the Nobel Peace Prize or something. That's never going to happen.
Yeah,
But what will happen is maybe if I put myself out there and I write something that I know is bad and do it with intentionality, not with a point of being perfect in that way, but with a point of expressing something that's honest and that's true to me, that brings me a little bit closer to my humanity, that helps me with my own self discovery, that helps me connect with people. About things that are real and important to me, then that's the function of poetry. I think once I understood that poetry doesn't necessarily have to be about being so elite and erudite and
yeah.
perfect, and
Getting
that
the
I can
getting the
I can make it
Miami
my own.
Pentameter
I was
right.
like, "Okay, I'm gonna make it a little bit bad then," and that kinda helps reduce the
Attention.
comparisons.
Yeah.
It helps, me feel more comfortable with it. It helps me create a little bit of sense of safety around it, and it makes it more enjoyable. It frees me up to be a little bit more fun with it, to experiment, because you know what? It's a little bit bad, and that's okay.
Well, experiments, the bad is very subjective because a lot of artists will say that they're terrible. Jimi Hendrix thought his voice was terrible. A lot of people think it's beautiful,
Mhm.
right? And so, like, the subjective opinion, artists are always like their own self critic. And what I find in art is the happy accident is like the idiom. It's like the main thing. It's like a lot of times artists, you put your 10,000 hours in to get good at anything you do. But once you get due, you kind of let go and you have this a download from the muse. You download from the universe. And a lot of what you do as an artist is you tap into your subconscious and you also tap into the out external.
Mhm.
And once you have the confidence that you have a certain level of skill, then you let it happen. And a lot of times those honest moments when you let it happen, even if it's not perfect, it's perfect for that moment. It's perfect for what you're trying to do. And that in itself is not necessarily bad. It's right, that's the punk aesthetic. It's like the independent artist aesthetic. You don't have to be Frank Sinatra to actually
Mhm.
sing a song. You could actually do really well and actually, yeah, you actually impact a lot of people by not being perfect.
Absolutely, and I think people really appreciate that. People, appreciate the imperfections around what we do, and that maybe the things that are making it not so perfect are actually what's making it more you, and people then get the opportunity to appreciate you, your authentic self a little bit more.
Because they really dive in, because a lot of times people are scared. I mean, everybody's trying to find a safety zone. We're all kind of running away from the wolf, and we have these virtual wolves at the door, and everybody's getting triggered by whatever their virtual wolf is or the real wolf.
Mhm.
And like if you go internal and you start to actually dive into, like, I always talk about the looking glass self, but really that's what it is. It's like when you really start to figure out, what am I saying? Because every artist, when they create stories, there's a lot of themselves in it. Even if they create characters, there's still something rooted in your subconscious that's coming through,
Absolutely.
coming from you. You can try to separate and say, well, that wasn't me. That's this character, but a lot of times it is you. You put some levels on it, like you mask things, you hide things, you create like layers, you have all kinds of euphemisms, or you play with words and you make it not direct, you be very indirect, or you're direct. And then when you're a poet, like, do you like being indirect and making things kind of like, oh, I have to read that a couple of times, or you want to be very direct?
I try to be as direct as possible because I get really frustrated by poems where I don't understand what's happening or what's going on or what it's about.
Yeah, that's a Victorian, like, the
So if
Victorian
I read a
problem.
poem and I have to read it 15 times, I get upset about it. So I I try to make my poems very accessible, very direct, and I feel that it creates a bit more safety around it. But poetry has like a spectrum to it. You know, there's a time and a place for those types of poems that are very lofty and use very language that's very esoteric and
Or
that you have
coded
to look up
language.
every other thing in the dictionary. You know, there's a time and a place for that. And I find that I gravitate more towards the poetry that's more modern and contemporary and a bit more direct and more accessible. And that's a little bit less about having the form of a sonnet and a little bit more about just expressing something that's true to me in the moment in a way that feels authentic to me.
That's always interesting because, like, Dunbar was really famous for being, like, very direct and not following, like, the canon. And even if you get to William Blake compared to Tennyson or Wordsworth, it's a lot shorter, it's more understandable, more people can relate to William Blake even in the modern day,
Hmm.
'cause his poems are like, it's still got, this Victorian language, but it's more accessible, you can actually get what he's saying, like,
Hmm.
on the first pass, it doesn't take a lot of passes to figure it out. Um, but I think a lot of times if you are able to talk, like, the or speak in your language of your poetry, like, to the point, you're direct. I think it's kinda like when people tell that story, the singer-songwriter age, when people were, like, listening to these songs and telling stories,
Hmm.
and it wasn't like coded stories, it's like a direct story. And I think people actually resonate when they say, "Oh, that could be me," or "I
Yeah,
felt that way," or I understand that, I can picture that in my mind."
I think again, there's a time and a place for all those things, but the poetry that resonates more with me and the just the reading, the stories in general, the narrations that resonate more with me are the ones that I find use language that's more like everyday kind of
Everyday
language.
conversational language.
Yeah, and that's more about concepts that interest me about things related to mental health and grief and emotions and kind of safety and um, right now, parenthood and things like that. So the things that kind of I'm attracted to are more of the things that have to do with me.
Because I really it can help. And like I said, it unpacks a lot because it's very cathartic when you're an artist. Like so, if you're like if you get into poetry, poetry as therapy. I mean, art as therapy is to kind of take those things that maybe people told you to push down, that your parents told you, oh, you don't talk about that. It's like
Mhm.
shameful to talk about that. You don't want to reveal your weak. A lot of men, it's like, oh, I can't reveal my weakness.
Oh, yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, but also like people, it's a lot about shame. It's like even like so both sexes can feel shame. Everybody can feel shame. And so like a lot of times people don't want to dive into the things they think are shameful or things that think they make them feel unsafe. They don't want to talk about it because it'll bring back the moment that they got felt
Mhm.
unsafe.
I really like poetry as a therapeutic tool for a lot of different reasons, but one of them is that it gives the author narrative authority. So, a lot of times when people have suffered hardships in life or they've gone through like a really traumatic experience, one of the things that can happen is kind of an internal fragmentation, and it's hard to feel safe after something like that, and it's hard to put together like a cohesive narrative
Mhm.
story about it. And your internal experience becomes so much more difficult to explain. And one of the things that I really love about poetry is it gives an outlet for that, and it gives a way for people to start kind of putting those puzzle pieces together. And part of how poetry does that is because it allows you control, because you get to write whatever it is that you want to write,
Mhm.
however you feel comfortable writing it. And it also allows space for ambiguity. It allows space for contradiction and different puzzle pieces that might not make sense together to exist, because poetry kind of makes it okay. It makes it into
Yeah.
art.
It
And
what I like about
it's a way to start expressing things that are maybe kind of disjointed. And what I found is that a lot of times talking about something directly is terrifying. Even if you're in a safe space or, with a therapist who you trust, sometimes tackling something head on is like, "Oh my god, I can't go there." And poetry, it sort of provides an indirect outlet for that, because a lot of times things that you might feel uncomfortable saying out loud for the first time, it
you're willing
it
to write
feels
down.
okay to maybe quietly write it down for yourself even. And then once you've opened that window a crack, then it becomes easier to open it a little bit more and see more of what's there.
What I love about the form is, like, if you don't get lost in the canon structure of iambic pentameter and trying to be like Shakespeare, trying to do the, like, real formal, Victorian again, they go into Victorian like, "Well, I can't write like Tennyson, I'm done," right? Uh,
Mhm.
or Lord Byron or something. It's like, you don't have to do that, right? You could go in and you could kinda think about it like, modern art. Kinda
Yeah.
like just splash it on the canvas. And you can be very random in this, and you can be it could be disjointed. It doesn't have to be like a short story or a novel. You
Yeah.
don't have to plan it out with to the nth degree, which is like the other types of writing. Once you go to a short story or a novel form, or even an essay, there's gotta be more logic brain to it.
Yeah.
Where the
Yeah.
poetry is more like it's the art brain, it's the soul, it's the heart. And you
Mhm.
don't have to be constrained. Just like I like free form fusion jazz.
Yeah.
Like, I can change the key, I can change the rhythm, I can change whatever I want at any time, and it doesn't have to follow like a classical structure like Chopin or Bach. I don't have to be locked in. I can do whatever I wanna do, and it's whatever I feel.
Mhm.
And I think when you have a form that allows you to do whatever you feel, then you've given yourself the safe space
Yeah,
to do what you're
absolutely.
trying to do, right?
Yeah. I sort of feel like it's almost the difference between journaling and poetry. A lot of times journaling is used as a coping skill in the therapeutic world, and I find that a lot of times when people really get into journaling and they're journaling, they're answering interesting questions and they're learning about themselves, and it is a great coping skill. But a lot of people tend to write down very linearly what happened, and they include
Yeah,
the who,
it's
what,
all
when, where, why,
constantly
and they're
running.
following a formula, and they're including a lot of details about stuff and who said what and what happened next. And I sort of feel like that has a time and a place, but when you ask somebody to write a poem, instinctively, like if you give them even the same prompt as a journaling prompt, but you tell them, write a poem about this, they kind of go to the core of the matter really quickly. You kind of get to the soul of it really quickly, because people don't care too much about explaining all the details then. They care more about how did this make me feel and what was this experience truly like for me? And you kind of express that more directly, even though it's in a poem and it's art and it's kind of an
Yeah.
indirect way of expressing it. People actually get to the core much more quickly.
And it can be non-sequential. I talk to filmmakers, like, and filmmakers, like, and, even songwriters can tell you sometimes the song starts from the middle. Sometimes it starts from the end.
Mhm,
Filmmakers will tell you too, and, like, when they're working, like, they film the last scene first,
mhm,
or they film the middle scenes first. They don't always go. You might think it's all sequential. It's not. A lot of times art is not sequential at all. It's
mhm.
running very chaotic. It's kinda like, chaos theory. It's like,
Chaos theory.
oh, yeah, Frank Zappa used to go into his living room and have live tapes, have his piano there, have his guitar there, and going through live tapes, going through all kinds of things, and kinda doing a collage format to put his songs together.
Hmm.
And people would say, "Well, that's very nonlinear," but that's kinda like a lot of times your ideas do come kinda in that way, unless you're
Yeah.
like a classical musician and you're trying to like, "I'm being very intentional, it's gonna be this, 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 this."
Mhm.
But a lot of art is not like as intentional as that. You might
Therapy
have
is
an
like
idea
that.
and it comes out of nowhere.
A lot of times people come to therapy and they come with an internal chaos of what's going on. And in therapy, you start in the middle or you start wherever you need to start and you start kind of just putting things together as in a collage and eventually the whole picture starts forming and you create
Like a
something
puzzle theory.
beautiful. Yeah, it is something like that that happens with therapy. And I think it's just kind of this is how our brains and our hearts work. We're not machines. We don't always do everything like super mathematically, logically all the time because emotions have their own kind of logic and it's not that.
That's interesting because the industrial age and this new information technology and now this AI age has tried to kind of pit the machine against humans
Hmm.
and basically told people that, all art can be done by a machine.
Well, I don't know about that.
I don't believe it, and I always try to tell people because the machine doesn't have a soul.
Yeah,
The
I don't want to
machine
read any poems that have been written by AI.
yeah, because the machine I mean, if you just you're like, why would you do that? I mean, like, prompt engineering a poem when the poetry is, like, from the soul, from the heart. So what type of person doesn't feel enough that they're gonna have the machine write their feelings, like, in faux feelings?
Faux feelings.
Faux feelings to, like, show that something that you can't do. So sometimes people are not some folks, they wanna be so perfect. They're trying to have the machine amplify them instead of realizing that, like, your imperfection is the core, right? That is what you actually want to strive for, is actually not having it perfect, not going from 0 to 100 and everything being great.
Mhm.
You have to actually go through it. And if I think the AI shortcuts the experience of living through as a human being, which is the artistic experience. And if you're trying to shortcut it, what's the goal?
Yeah, you're just losing your humanity in the process. I don't know anybody who wants to read poetry that's written by AI. And sort of feel like poetry and the arts and creative expression, this is what an expression of our humanity and getting in touch with that is part of what allows us to remain human and remain grounded and allows us to connect not just with ourselves but with the society and the people around us and it's so important, it's so important nowadays to do that, to cultivate that in our lives, to nourish that in our lives. So I find myself now, I started out kind of like with a distaste for poetry. Now I'm all in. Now I'm
Oh,
like, I want
yeah,
to
well,
do it. I want
poetry
to
is
read more of it. I want to be in touch with it. And I find that it's a great way to connect with myself and it's a great way to connect with others. And that's a very good counterpoint to this movement towards AI that we're seeing now where AI is writing everything and AI is kind of doing all of these tasks for us. They can't do this one. AI cannot do this one.
no, you can't. It's like I tell you, like, AI can't be an actor. It can feign an actor. You can create an AI bot that looks like an actor, but it's not going to be like Orson Welles in The Third Man,
Mhm.
right? And you watch Orson Welles in that black and white movie and the way his eyes look, the way his face turns. It's like you can try to replicate something that already exists and then put it into a collage format and make me think that that is real. but a human being is very specific. We have this internal light and heart
Mhm.
and soul that the machine tries to kind of junk food create these images as though it looks like it's real, but it's not real. It's not really. That's like when people listen to AI music. It's like it's too perfect. Any
Mm.
really good musician can discern it because it's like it doesn't have mistakes. It doesn't have classic music. When you listen to the great songs in the 70s and the 50s, there are errors in it,
Mhm.
right? There's timing errors. There's things that because human beings are playing the drums or to play an instrument. Human beings aren't perfect, but part of that imperfection is the beauty of the piece. Just like a painting, it's not perfect. Not supposed to be perfect. And I think with people in this modern age, as the kids are being taught that everything's got to be perfect, and I think they're losing the plot.
Yeah. I'm definitely a big, unproponent, is that a word? An
Yeah,
unproponent of of perfection. I think perfection is like
I mean,
the antithesis of
it's
joy.
art. But the antithesis of really art because, like, anytime you're an artist, when you really are pushing it, you're going into something you're not great at,
Mm,
right?
mhm.
All the great artists push themselves beyond their comfort level to go into forms that they can and even said they didn't like. You know, the people like when they push it, it's not comfortable. It's not
Yeah.
supposed to be comfortable. You're supposed to actually kind of try to push yourself to be not what you've done 100 times,
Yeah,
but
because if it's
something
comfortable, it's boring, and
boring,
it's
yeah.
probably just not worth doing over and over again.
Yeah, because why would you write like, you write your a poem, and it's your most popular poem, and everybody wants it to you to write the same poem over and over again. But, like, as an artist, like, you have no interest in it.
Yeah.
And so the next poem is maybe your fans don't think it's the best, but that's not the point. You weren't writing it for them to think it's the best. You're writing it because you felt something.
Mhm.
If it resonates with whoever, that's fine. It's like it'll find the law of attraction will find whoever it resonates with, but I don't have an obligation to just keep on repeating myself as an
Right.
artist. Which I think some people in the business of art, that's what the problem is. They want you to just make the widget,
Mm,
and
it's
the widget doesn't
stifling.
have heart.
Yeah, it's stifling, and it really just takes the joy out of the experience. I think when humans are given freedom to truly create something, they go wild and they make things that are truly surprising and unexpected, and that's part of the joy of it. You kinda have to let the art surprise you a little bit, and you don't do that if you just keep doing the same thing over and over and over and over again.
Yeah, because I mean, what people want is like the fans might say they want to hear that song again. But, like, what happens is, like, you get a Hendrix, you get the Beatles, you get Led Zeppelin, you get these people came and they did something different, and then other people cloned them, and then eventually they kind of overdo it, and then you get bored.
Mhm.
Like disco, people got bored, it's like the same, and then it got kind of pushed into a niche or a novelty thing. Like, if you overdo anything,
Mhm.
like even today with EDM, it's like with the drop, it's like it's the same drop on all the songs. It's like it's the same structure on all the songs. It's like it gets boring.
Yeah.
People then say, "Well, I want maybe I should listen to country music. Maybe I should listen to jazz. Maybe I should listen to progressive." They get tired, and like you have to be human. You can't just like allow like you just want to repeat things because the business guys want to repeat it, and the popularity people on the TikTok want to see what the latest thing is until they run the latest trend to death, and then they have to come up with a new one. But that's
Yeah.
really the thing is like that those trends have an end date because you can't keep on doing
What do you
it.
think helps you kind of cultivate your novelty and your sense of experimenting and surprise? What do you think helps you cultivate that?
Well, I just tend to have this idea that I'm just gonna do whatever I can like, I try to push it because I'm a synthesist, so I have synthesizers and I build, sounds from scratch. I actually take waveforms and I use oscillators to create my own custom tones. That is not something most kids do today, they grab samples. I actually have hardware synths that come up with the tone. I work a lot making a tone, and then I let that tone tell me what the song should be. So I
Hmm.
go through creating interesting tones by kind of accidental just experimentation with waveforms. And then I allow like also my subconscious or dreams to kind of drive my music. Or if I hear something on the news, I hear something my wife says, or I just allow myself to be kind of like a typical writer.
Do you feel like
Writers,
you're kind of open to the
you have to be
experience,
open.
and you're open to what might happen, and you're experimenting with something that you enjoy?
Yeah, you leave it very open. I think any great writer is like a sponge.
Hmm.
If you talk to a lot of writers, they're very observant. Writers will go, well, you can always see creative people. Sometimes they're a person in the room observing everybody. They're not talking as much to everybody, but they're kind of observing all this stuff. And then it comes into their work because they not only are they observing the external, but they observe their own subconscious and
Mhm.
then they merge it. And the really great artists are good at doing a combination, a synthesis of like both of those things.
Yeah, merging maybe what they observe and what they've learned with kind of the heart of their experience.
I think that's what makes great art because then every day is like I can't wait for the next day to happen because I have no idea what I'm gonna pick up. Right? So instead of having this kind of like negative point of view of like what's going on, when you're like into pure art, is like but every day I'm here, I have an opportunity to pick up on something and then spin that into something. And the thing is that it become this like never ending thing of like I can always find something that I
Yeah.
can whether it works or not, I don't know, but I can find something.
It sounds like the work that you do and the element of surprise and the joy that might come from that, I mean, that's really powerful motivator.
Yeah, I think some people are so into cloning. I mean, with the kind of culture we have today, everybody's looking, oh, what's the latest cat video? What's the latest this? And then they always want to say, well, I need to look like this influencer because they got the right haircut, they got the right chin, they got the right makeup, they got the right this. It's like, well, what about you? Like, why don't you go and decide to do something? And then you create, like, they have to, you should have the audacity to create your own trend.
So it
The
sounds like you
audacity.
really appreciate originality.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are stuck in copying. We kind of
Mm.
live in a copy age. Everybody thinks that that's what they should do. And I'm like, that's exactly not what you should
Well, I
do.
think people are afraid. I think maybe people are afraid of creating something because of the fear that it might be bad or that it might be judged, and
They
I
don't like
think
the haters. Like, everybody's scared of being like, "Oh, I hate it."
but I think that's so sad because it does take away the originality, it takes away their ability to, like, be authentic, it takes away the creativity, and it takes away all the joy that kinda comes with that,
Look at our
and
yeah, I mean, look
if there's a way that we can help lower those barriers to the judgment that you're anticipating, and that's what's inhibiting you from being creative, I mean, I think we sort of have a almost like a moral obligation to lower those barriers, and I think that's part of why I'm so passionate about bad poetry, like, put it out there, let it be a little bad, see what happens.
actually, I mean, I watch a lot of foreign TV because I lived in Japan for 2 years, so I watch a lot of K-drama, I watch, like, Taiwanese film, TV show and what I love about watching, like, Asian dramas is they come from these, like, areas, like, 'cause I'm not from, the East, and so they have these stories that don't come from, like, archetypes that I know. They
Mhm.
come from these different ideas. And I like what I get kind of bored with the Western culture lately is like you keep on recycling the same stuff.
I mean, how many
Like,
times can we redo Spider-Man?
how many time Mission Impossibles can we have? I mean, everything is like
Yeah.
repeated to the nth degree. And when they take something like, oh, let's go redo Moby Dick, it's like, well, the original was probably better, you know. Let's redo like something that they already did, like West Side Story. Like, you gonna make a new version? The original is it. It's like some things stand like their own test of time. Why
Mhm.
don't you come up like I like independent films. I like foreign films. I like seeing stuff coming from out of left field because like whatever, it seemed to be in the 70s and the 80s, maybe because I'm a child of the 70s, but it seemed to be more stories that were just stories for adults. You
Mm.
go to the movies and have like a really interesting story. It might be slow. It wasn't gonna bang you over the head with the plot. You actually had to, like, pay attention,
Yeah.
and I was like, "You can't pay attention?" So we can't have plots that are a little tricky.
Mhm.
You can't have things that just don't hit you over the head. It's got to be all laid out, and like that seems kind of very disappointing to me.
Our attention spans are just a little shorter, I think.
Yeah, so it's like at least the poetry makes you think. Like, what if you're gonna read something that's not being like spoon fed to you in video,
Mm,
and even audio today we get spoon fed like just what we call grooves or beats, but there's no song structure like a Beatles song or a Carpenter song or an Elton John song. Those songs have structure and they kind of pull you in like a good novel.
mhm.
Everything today just hits you in the first 5 seconds. Got to have some groove that just like it's the same thing, just over and over. It's like, oh, that's catchy, but what does it mean? You want some depth, and I think poetry forces you to have some depth because you're telling something very honest, and you're using it for mental health purposes and resilience. That means it's going to be very impactful.
Ideally, I mean, poetry for therapy, yeah, it tends to be really impactful, but there's a spectrum for things. I think there's poetry that's just kind of silly and
Fun,
fun
silly,
too, and
yeah.
that's okay. It's a little bit lighthearted, not everything has to be so serious all the time. And I kind of feel like that's again part of the reason why I went to bad poetry because like I don't know that I can be so serious all the time. That's hard for me.
Well,
Sometimes I do
comedy is
just want to
very
like chill a
powerful.
little.
Well, comedy is interesting because comedy has some depth that people don't realize. Like if you get silly or get comedic, you can actually still be telling somebody to kind of like people lower their defenses,
Yeah.
and
Well,
then
I think
you can get to a point that maybe they wouldn't have listened to if they weren't laughing.
absolutely. I think the best comedy I love improv comedy, and I love going to comedy shows, and I feel like the best comedy that I really appreciate is the kind of comedy that takes, like, the sorrows of life or the sorrows of everyday life or something really kind of difficult that you're going through, and they make it funny. And I'm like, "Okay, that was cathartic. That was really cool." That takes a lot of talent.
Yeah, you think about. I remember watching like Robin Williams stand up, and he'd be very dynamic, but he would tell these stories. They're very impactful. I mean, a lot of the great comedians, when you actually saw them, they making everybody laugh, but they were saying things. They were sneaking in politics. They were sneaking in statements like empathy,
Mhm.
understanding, like depth. But on its face, it's funny. But it's actually there's a lesson, there's a moral, there's a story. They're telling a point, they're getting a point of view, but it's disarming.
Yeah.
It's like I like science fiction, like Rod Serling in the Twilight Zone. He would have all the science fiction stuff, but he'd making social commentary through the fiction, or like Gene Roddenberry on Star Trek. He would have, oh, this is out in space. But he's actually making a comment about today. But because
Mhm.
it's out in space, he's like, you don't necessarily pick it right off. It's not like in your face direct, but it was still there. It was somewhat direct, but he's like, some green alien is saying something. But they're actually saying something that actually represents a real feeling, a real problem.
Mhm.
So you can use art to kind of be a subterfuge to kind of get the things through.
I mean, art is an amazing vehicle for so many different things. I feel like that's one of the beauties of art. You can use it as a vehicle for all kinds of messages, all kinds of things, even therapy.
You say in like talk therapy, people might be like not willing to reveal because they have to say it out loud.
Yeah,
So,
it's
so once
terrifying.
you, but when you put it into a poem or you write it down, then you have a little bit of safety, like you're saying, you have a little cover.
Yeah, I think there's the indirect expression of it, the taking back the narrative authority of it, and also just the knowledge that just because you write something down doesn't mean you have to share it. So again, you have the control over it, and if you want to, you can just keep it for yourself. And I do think that that helps create a lot of safety for people to start
Or start, yeah.
externalizing their experience. So we talk about externalizing a lot in therapy, but kind of what that means is a lot of times you're carrying a lot inside, and because it's inside of you and it's kind of abstract and it's in your head and it's kind of like a tornado, it's hard to look at it. and it's hard to be objective about it. But once you start externalizing, so you make something with it, you make something like a poem with it, now you have something to look at that's outside of you, and you
Mhm.
start maybe creating a little bit of safe distance for yourself to maybe take a different perspective on it, or to start seeing it in a different light, or just even just starting to begin to understand it. And poetry is a great vehicle for that.
It's that introspection. Yeah, I remember there was a tech bro that was pointing out that he loves not being introspective. And I was like,
What?
he said that there was to be, anti, like, no empathy and no introspection. And so I'm like, okay, so that's like STEM now. That's what you should do. So like
I don't
really,
know about that.
like, but there's this idea like you can't the empathy even for yourself is
Mm,
weak, right? You get these kind of like super male kind of attitudes, these
mm,
alpha, and they can't have any introspection. They can't have any kind of maybe you made a mistake. No, I can't admit that. Right? I can't admit that maybe I could actually have handled this better.
that's a
They
very
once you
sad way to
start,
be.
yeah, with once you put something down, like you put it, take it from the inside, and then you have a chance to kind of go and have that lesson learned session. Because I'm in IT and
Mm,
we build stuff, right? And we say, oh well, we messed up. Let's go back and look at what we did. But we look at it as like, well, that's not like, oh, everybody's gonna get fired. Like, no, we need to learn and iterate and make another version.
'cause we're doing stuff that's never been done before.
Yeah, we don't know. It's like it's okay to be in that JAD session or joint application development session or whiteboard session.
Mhm.
And everything, but it's okay to raise your hand, which is the opposite when you're in school. Nobody wanted to raise their hand. Like in our environments where I work with these people are willing to kind of put themselves out there because they know they're not going to get destroyed if they
Mhm.
have the wrong thing. They need to put everything on the table. And when you can put everything on the table, I think like your poetry is like putting everything on the table for yourself. So then you can go back and have your own lesson learned. It's just you in the
Yeah.
paper.
It's hard to learn something from an experience if you can't bring yourself to look at it.
Yeah. I think
So
that's a
this
problem.
can be an outlet to start creating some safety where you can look at something and then create some distance, create some safety, and then you can start maybe thinking about what you learned from that experience for sure.
I think a lot of people feel disconnected, you know, from themselves. And then they're disconnected. There's in sociology, there's the idea of Weber, they had anomy, like this disconnectedness. That was my major. But
Hmm.
the idea, like the disconnected people that cause a lot of social ills. That when you study groups of people, like the individual microcosm level of that person having that anomy, because they're disconnected. They
Oh
can't feel
yeah.
connected to society. So then that you extrapolate that, and it turns into social problems, like group problems.
Yeah, I mean, but it starts with each individual. When we're disconnected from ourselves, all kinds of issues happen. I mean, if you're if you're not really connected to your internal experience, you're not really connected to your feelings, you can't bring yourself to look at that. You'll find yourself doing a lot of things and not knowing why, and having issues with people and problems and issues at work and all kinds of, and you're thinking everybody else is, so messed up and the world is messed up and this is why I'm unhappy, but a lot of times what is part of what's happening is that you're kind of disconnected from yourself and you're doing things and you're not really knowing why you're doing them or what's behind it for you or what's motivating you, and that's leading you to do things that are later causing consequences that are not what you intended, and you don't know how to get out of it. But how you get out of it is you start getting more in touch with yourself.
And that's the thing. A lot of people are like, "Oh, that's too foo foo." They're like, "Oh, it's too foo." They rather go say, "You know what? It's my neighbor across the lane. He dressed a certain way. He's causing all my problems." Like he has a way of like wearing his hat, and it's like he's bringing down the value for the whole neighborhood just because the way he does that. I'm like, really? Like maybe it's because like you're not taking care of your house,
Hmm.
right? That you're not taking care of your own thing. That you don't have enough self respect to understand there's some things that you've done,
Mhm.
right? But you can't own up to anything, right? You just say everything's external, everything's the other.
And the
Everything.
reality is, as much as we might be inclined to judge other people, usually people are harsher towards themselves and they compare themselves more to what they think is the ideal of perfection. And they're always going to find themselves lacking. And so this inability to have flexibility with other people or to enjoy other people's expression or however authenticity, however it is they want to be, your inability to embrace that or appreciate that already tells me you can't do that for yourself. That would be too hard for you to even fathom doing for yourself. And it tells me you probably have a really poor inner experience in self-knowledge and self-awareness, which is leads to sadness. And then you
Well,
have a lot of people who
yeah.
are very sad, very disconnected.
Well, low self-esteem, low self-worth,
Mm,
but then it projects, becomes like just like guilt is very dangerous. Low self-esteem can be very big negative. Like
absolutely.
in terms of like I'm a Buddhist, when we talk about like energy, you get
Mm.
like this energy, like negativity. So if you have the low self-esteem, low self-worth, then you have this kind of energy cloud of negativity around you, and it kind of tracks additional negativity, and then it just keeps on flowing like a bad loop.
Yeah, you get I call them spirals. I talk a lot in my work about like spirals of shame, that lead to nothing good and it makes your self-esteem go off a cliff and it just inhibits you in so many ways and it takes away your creativity and it makes you scared of doing anything and expressing yourself especially. But I think the opposite is also true. You can have a spiral of goodness. You can have a spiral of joy and it kind of gets maybe kickstarted in a same way. It always starts with something small and being willing to take a step in a direction. And sometimes doing something more towards artistic freedom might be a way to kickstart it, kickstart that spiral of goodness.
But like a lot of people feel like they can't be artists because I've always like I'm naming checking all these key on the canon like Shakespeare and Herman Melville and all these people, but it's like you don't have to be Herman Melville. You don't have to be you know the Jane Eyre. You don't have to have that to express yourself. But I think a lot of people have felt like, oh, I've got to be this high level artist to
Mm.
be able to even do it. Like they won't even pick up like any kind of instrument.
It's like if they can't be the best, if they can't be the world renowned
Yeah,
best,
they're
then
done.
why even try?
They
And I
won't even pick up
think
the pen.
we try because we're human and that's what we're kind of wired to do. We're wired toward creative expression. We're wired to enjoy it and to enjoy producing it and to create things. I mean, I think humans fundamentally, we are creators. Look at everything around you. It was created
Yeah.
by a human. And we enjoy this, we're propelled towards it, we don't even have to think about it too much, we just create things. And I think when we actively try to stop things from being creative, when we actively try to stop ourselves from creating, that's when the sadness kicks in, and that's when we start feeling really disconnected from ourselves. Creativity and the joy of creating something and being spontaneous with it, I think it's something that's fundamentally human. And I think this idea that we have to be the best at it or else we won't try it at all, it it's what leads to a lot of disconnection and a lot of shame spiraling and a lot of sadness that's ultimately it leads us nowhere good. And it's not what I would want for the world, it's not what I would want for other people, and it's not what I want for myself.
No, 'cause I think a lot of folks today are so caught up in, well, I got to get 1,000 likes on my post. I've got to be trending, or they got to be in the in crowd that's watching the million cat videos,
Mhm.
and they can't watch anything that has less than 100 likes, even though what has less than 100 likes actually may speak to you, but you're being told like, well, that's not has no value. So if people are being told that it only has value if it's got a million views,
Yeah.
then what are you doing? It's like a lot of things are a lot of art was not popular in its time. A lot of
Yeah.
art was kind of experimental. I mean, William Blake wasn't even known during the Victorian age. They found his stuff later after he was gone. So the idea that you have to be popular like in the time that you're around is not necessarily true. It's like you should create whatever you feel like and put it into the ether because you have no idea where that's going to go.
Yeah. And
And
you won't ever find out unless you try.
yeah, you don't have to be the most popular person to resonate. I mean, if you put out something and you have a post that's like only 100 people like it, but what if that one person that likes it it gives you an opportunity to do something, then that's more valuable than the million likes.
Mhm.
Because there's so many, like I've had posts where suddenly I had an opportunity, I got to work with another artist. It didn't get a lot of views, but it actually resonated with that artist, and we actually got to do something. So
Mhm.
that there's like, what's the value of it is not measured in the metrics on a spreadsheet. It's measured by like the impact it has to another human being, even if I don't know them. If it
Yeah.
impacted somebody and made their life better, that's why you do it.
I think this is a very kind of a Buddhist approach, which is to not attach yourself so much to the results of what you're doing, but instead enjoy the journey of it. And that's actually something that's very influential in therapy too, like dialectical behavior therapy, DBT, very much espouses that same thing in different ways and with different therapy lingo. But the idea is enjoy what's present, be present, enjoy what is now, and focus on what is now, and don't attach yourself too much to the results of things because if you do, it will take away your joy and you'll probably feel so inhibited you won't even try. And I feel like that's also kind of what's behind creating bad poetry. Don't attach yourself to the results of it. And it's okay if it doesn't turn out to be award winning poetry. The idea is to be in the moment, be present with yourself, and create something that's authentic to you. And in doing that, you enjoy your experience of being you more.
Well, it's a risk, because like when you're you, yeah, that's your secret sauce, and like everybody's like, well, I don't feel it. Well, that's fine. You don't feel it, but somebody else feels it. And
Mhm.
so just because somebody doesn't feel it, like the hater, doesn't mean that you shouldn't do it, right? And the problem is we measure things based on external input, like you're saying. Like if you don't measure based on the external input or the feedback you get. Now every artist will be like, yeah, your lesson learned, I can do better, right? And every time you do something, you get better. Like the whole idea, like 10,000 hours to be an athlete, to be a musician, to be a poet, to be the more you do it, I'm sure like the more you started writing your poems, by
Mhm.
like your 100th poem, you started getting into a flow and they say, hey, I know I got this. I know what I'm doing. Right. And so then you get this level of expertise because you actually have to actually practice
Yeah.
to get good at anything.
I I really do think that there's something to this idea of being present and just doing something in the here and now because it makes sense to you here and now and not focus too much on how other people will receive it or what the results of it will be. It gives you the freedom to create something that's a lot more meaningful and that it's a lot more expressive and meaningful to you. And you do end up finding your tribe, you end up finding your people that resonate with that, a lot more easily that way. And then you find yourself actually getting really good results as a consequence. So it's almost like you have to be very indirect about it. You can't focus on the results, just focus on the now. And then what happens when you focus on the now is you create the environment where you get the results that you want anyway.
Yeah, because what happens is like the law of attraction, like the good vibes come to you
Mm.
and the bad vibes kind of bounce off because you just like you don't care about it because the good vibes are coming through. And so for every person that says, I hate it, there's somebody coming in and saying they love it. Maybe it's not the ratio you want initially, but eventually, like it comes into balance. You're more where you're supposed to be, right?
Yeah.
You kind of
Um,
end up being where you're supposed to be if you let yourself follow your journey. But if you're scared of walking out the door or opening the window, it's like, well, you're never going to get out, you know?
I always find it interesting that there are all these different theories that we use in therapy, like ACT therapy, DBT therapy, psychodynamic therapy, um, IFS therapy. There are all these different types of therapy, but at the core of it, they all kind of say the same thing, just in very different ways with very different lingo, but they're all kind of saying the same things. And I kind of feel the same way about like what you're talking about now, even though you're not using therapy speak, you're coming at it from a different perspective using different language. It's all kind of saying the similar things. And I think those similarities and the things that are in common with all these different therapies that are out there, they're what's real and what touches on what it means to be human and to be living this experience. And finding the kind of theory or philosophy that resonates the most with you is probably going to get you where you need to go. And it almost doesn't matter what philosophy it is.
Yeah. I think some people are so into like the method or the practice. So I've got to be like a Nichiren Daishonin Buddhist. That's the only way. Right? And I was like, no, it doesn't have to be the only. Like, maybe if that happened to speak to
I would say
me,
keep going on that journey. Learn more
it
about what
happened
Buddhism
to
is about.
it happened to speak to me, but it doesn't mean that I don't practice like other types of Buddhism I don't respect. And so the idea is whatever speaks to you, that's what it is, right? And
Mhm,
it could be a point in time you change over time. I would grew up being like, Baptist. Now I'm a Nichiren Daishonin Buddhist. Like over time, people evolve.
mhm,
They change what my 17-year-old self, I like this.
mhm.
58-year-old self, I like that. Like, it's like some things stay the same, some things don't.
And I
And
love that. I love that about humans. We have this ability to change our mind and to try different things and adopt different things. That kind of flexibility is so beautiful. And I think when people kind of get caught up in, well, this is the only right way of thinking, I mean, it's ridiculous. That's not how we work at all. And tomorrow you might wake up and feel differently, and that's okay. Let's embrace that.
I think that makes things a lot better to like deal with the rest of humanity. Like if your absolutism ends into like, oh, I gotta build this fence, I gotta build this wall, I gotta build this like thing to keep you out, right? Instead of like, well, maybe we should work together so that we can actually move forward. Cause like working against you, like, well, now we have to fight.
Now we
Why do
have
you
to
need to
fight.
fight? Right? If you work together, you can share the food, you can share the air, you can share the water. If you work against it, like, I want all the food, I want all the water, I want all X. And like, well, that doesn't go anywhere. But it
Mhm.
goes it goes somewhere, but somewhere you probably don't want to be. You know,
Well, I'll tell you what, in my core, I am not a fighter. I think I'm more of a lover and a poet. And
yeah.
if I were ever put in a situation where I had to fight, I would probably just like run or maybe die. But I'm probably not much of a fighter. So what appeals to me and what attracts me and what I gravitate towards is I think more of the gentleness in life and understanding what my human experience is about and how I relate and how I can connect more effectively to others. And what I have found works for me more is building bridges, and doing that through poetry is just one of the ways that I do it. And I've found that it's really enjoyable.
Well,
So
yeah.
that's kind of what I'm about now.
Well, it builds community because if you build a community, you're building. You're not like tearing something down. Like if you have people that are creative, they tend to be building. They tend to be like coming up with a new concept, a new idea. Other people might be scared of that because when you come up with something new, it's like, what's that? Why do you have that? Instead of asking like, why do you have that? It's like, well, maybe I should try it. Maybe I should like, oh, that's cool. Is instead of being like jealous or envious or scared, like, why do you have to go to that place?
Or maybe just acknowledge that those feelings are there. I'm scared and I'm jealous and I might be a little envious, and I'm going to try this new thing anyway. I'm going to try to build a bridge anyway. And
Or
it's
write it down
scary,
in
but
a
I'm going to
poem.
do it anyway. Or I'm
Right?
going to write a poem about it
About it, like
anyway.
why do I feel jealous that my neighbor has X?
Mm,
And why do I feel that way every time? Instead of like what does that say? And what can I do to feel less jealous? What could I start to look at? Like, why do I feel that way? And
mhm.
that kind of goes into like you gotta do that review of like instead of just like being in the feeling and then like letting it run you, like try to like look why.
Get curious about it. I know, I'm a
Yeah.
big proponent of curiosity. I feel like the curiosity is almost like the antidote to everything. And if you have feelings or you find yourself doing things that are not in line with your values, what I would say is start getting curious about that. And one way to start getting curious about it is to start writing it out, maybe even write a poem about it, to start seeing what's there and get in touch with what's behind that, because you will probably be surprised at what you discover, and you'll be surprised at what you discover about yourself. I always think of feelings and emotions in general is they are messengers. They're here to bring you a message. And if you are not curious about the message, then you will never figure out what it's trying to tell
Hmm.
you. And a lot of times, what happens is people have these negative connotations associated with feelings, like, oh, envy. Oh my God, that's so bad. That's like, against the Bible or whatever. I can't have that. So they shut it down, and then they don't get curious about it. But if you
Yeah.
don't get curious about it, you never would find that part of you that was trying to give you a message. And I think what people discover when they get curious about things, especially things that they think are negative emotions, and I say that in quotation marks because I don't actually think emotions are negative ever. They're
Hmm.
they're at best neutral. They just kind of are data. Think of it as data. Emotions are data. And if you are not curious about what the data is trying to show you, you'll never see what it is, what's truly behind it. And you're missing out on a part of yourself.
You're not listening to your soul. Like your body tells you stuff you might not listen to. You end up in a hospital, right? If you
Mhm.
don't listen to your soul, you don't listen to your heart, you can end up in the same place.
Mhm.
Because like if you push things down, it has an effect. And like you might think that that's the best way to handle it until you end up feeling the effect. And it's better to kind of deal with the things that are hard because life is hard. It
Life
it
is hard.
was never meant to be like an easy cake, it's easy as pie, no, it's not. It's like
Mhm.
you're gonna have to deal with and not every day you're gonna win, right? Every day you can get closer. Not every day you can go 0 to 100, you get closer to where you wanna be. And sometimes
Mhm.
you backtrack a little bit, but that doesn't mean you give up. I think a lot of times with all or nothing society, like pass fail society, instead of everything's more gray than that, it's more color than that, there's more shades going
Yeah.
on, and everybody's always into these absolutism, and it's like that doesn't work.
No, it really doesn't. And if you find yourself always in this black and white thinking, you're probably suffering quite a bit.
Yeah, I think
But we
that's where
thrive
we're
in the
headed to.
gray. That's
Oh,
what I
yeah,
say.
describe it, but
I
we
would
always
say
end up
gray is probably my favorite color. I feel like we thrive in the gray. Gray is great.
gray is the best, I deal with a lot of colors, but, in terms of, like, my music, I kinda think in terms of colors, like, when I'm thinking about sound.
Mm.
I kind of think of like a soundscapes or sound paintings, and I
Oh,
talk about
cool.
sound in terms of color. Some musicians do that, but I think it just gives this idea that like, oh, I can play with these colors, these tones. And the more you play with like not being absolute, like dealing with what we call discordance
Mhm.
in music, sometimes a little discordance is actually emphasizes something, or
Mm.
silence emphasizes something. So sometimes we actually have notes that are a little sharp or a little flat or a little off, or they're there to draw attention so that you were telling a story with the notes.
They make life way more interesting.
Yeah, if everything was just like, oh, it's this major chord, simple, always hitting that same key all the time, you never hit a sharp, never hit a flat, never do anything interesting, then you're like, okay, then it's like it's like Ozzy and Harriet, like Leave It to Beaver. It's like, "Okay, I can live there, but I don't really want to." But, we always end up passing the hour quicker than we imagine we actually hit it, and,
Mm.
I wanna tell people that we do have your QR code spin up. QR code, just take your phone, you scan it, and that goes to your sageinsighttherapy.com. So if people do that, what do they find at your website?
Oh, they'll find information about me. They'll find information about my private therapy practice that's here in Utah. But perhaps more importantly, right now, they'll find information about my book. So if you go to the page called The Book, you'll find information about how I understand it, A Bad Poet's Guide to Mental Health and Resilience. It's a book that's from my heart. It's a book that exposes actually a lot of me. There's a lot of vulnerability in there. But I think part of what makes this book interesting is that all the poems are infused with mental health frameworks that I've found helpful, not just in my own life, but in how I work and teach in therapy. And the idea is that the poems themselves and the poem prompts that are there for you to explore help you kind of get in touch with yourself, help increase self awareness, hopefully, and help provide a safe space where you can explore and get curious about what's there. And hopefully that will create more insight, create more clarity, and let you know kind of not just where you are, but give you some clarity on the direction that you want to take next. So, I think we didn't get a chance to talk about this, but I would have loved to maybe have another conversation about resiliency and what creates resiliency in us, because I think that one of the things that helps create it is cultivating our creativity and taking those risks and taking those chances to express yourself and seeing what's there and valuing your experience of it and not being afraid of owning your authenticity. That's part of what creates resiliency. And I hope that's a message that people take away from my book.
Again, we have the website here on the link, and we have your Instagram page. Those will be fully clickable on the platforms we've been on. We've been live on LinkedIn, YouTube, and Kick. We're going to be on all the other platforms where you can listen to or watch a podcast by the end of the day tomorrow. I want to thank you for being a guest on the Family Electric Ghost podcast.
Thank you for having me. This has been so great.
Thank you. Have a great night.
Okay, bye.